Hello family. Welcome to Marla Stories, your home for gripping African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now sit back and enjoy the drama. Marla James stepped into the silent foyer of Apex Digital Group just before sunrise, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished marble. The scent of lemon-scented cleaner mingled with the faint aroma of early brewing coffee from the lobby cafe. She moved through the shadowed space as if guided by instinct, her gray jumpsuit blending seamlessly into the muted tones of steel columns and glass partitions. With practiced ease, she wheeled her dented janitor cart into position beside the wide windows, then paused to inhale the cool, antiseptic air. In these still moments, before the executives arrived, she felt a rare sense of calm. By 6:15, daylight filtered through the glass façade, illuminating corridors that would soon buzz with ambition. Plush chairs and towering potted plants lined hallways where executives strode in tailored suits, clutching briefcases and coffee cups. Behind each closed door, decisions were made that shaped industries. Marla preferred the simplicity of her tasks: a spotless floor, a gleaming countertop, a restroom so immaculate it reflected nothing but itself. In the break room, she refilled flavored syrups, neatly stacked porcelain mugs, and double-checked the inventory sheet pinned to the wall. She arranged pastries on plattered trays and lined up glass carafes of juice. Invisible yet indispensable. That was her place. At 7:02, the elevator doors parted on her floor, and in streamed the VP team, led by Grayson Holt. His silver hair and expensive cufflinks gleamed as he descended onto the polished ground. Spotting Marla, he paused mid-step, lips curling into a smirk. "Look alive, wallflower," he drawled. His tone skated the line between jest and disdain. His colleagues stifled laughs behind cupped hands. One junior director quipped, "She probably dreams in mop heads, doesn't she?" Laughter rippled through the hallway, punctuating Marla's quiet dignity. She clenched her jaw, but her face remained an unreadable mask. She bowed her head slightly and returned to polishing a brass handrail. Just beyond Holt's entourage, Marcus, the cleaning supervisor, pushed a large vacuum. He greeted Marla with a brief nod. "The new brush had arrived today," he murmured. "Tell the warehouse team." Marla returned the nod and jotted a reminder in her mind. Speak with the maintenance crew after lunch. Small tasks, but they mattered. Marcus's respect was as rare and valuable as sunlight in her world. His quiet acknowledgement bolstered her determination to endure the daily parade of indifference and mockery. By mid-morning, rumors about her circulated in hushed corridors. Analysts exchanged theories. Does she even live anywhere? Maybe she doesn't speak. A cluster of interns filmed her through an open door, their giggles muffled behind clipboards. Marla glimpsed the phone's blinking red light and felt the sting of humiliation, then refocused on wiping a fingerprint from the elevator panel. Each insult sank into her awareness like rainfall into soil, nourishing a resolve she concealed beneath her jumpsuit. She catalogued their shoes, the colors of their ties, and the precise words they used. These details, she believed, might one day serve a purpose. At 10:45, Marla entered the ladies' restroom on the 7th floor to find dark red nail polish spilled across the marble counter. Beneath it lay a scrawled note, "Cinderella's cleanup time." 3 executives, 2 in pencil skirts, 1 in pressed chinos, stood nearby, admiring the mess. "Bet she thinks this is art," one teased. Marla slipped on gloves and cleaned the stain with surgical precision, scrubbing until not a trace remained. She folded the creased note into a neat square and slid it into her pocket. She treated the insult like any other mess, neutralized, catalogued, and stored away for future reckoning. In the main corridor, she paused to hold open a door for a young intern, a Johnny, burdened with a stack of binders. His grateful smile glowed in contrast to the boardroom's harsh lighting. "Thank you, Marla," he offered softly. She nodded once, lips barely curving. His simple kindness warmed her chest, a reminder that decency still existed. She carried that warmth forward as she wiped down a glass wall adjacent to the CEO's office, overhearing fragments of conversation, next quarter projections, merger rumors, missing our targets. In those words, she detected fear and urgency, neither of which deterred her commitment to her own quiet revolution. Lunch arrived in bites of solitude. Marla retreated to the custodial closet, where a narrow window allowed her a glimpse of a bustling street below. She unwrapped a modest sandwich, sipped lukewarm tea from a stainless steel thermos, and gazed at pedestrians crossing the intersection. In that moment, she permitted herself a memory, the first day she donned a fresh uniform, excited to earn an honest living. Back then, she had dreams, university scholarships, scholarship letters, ambitions of becoming an engineer. But life, she discovered, often required detours. She swallowed a bite and smiled at the memory of youth, resilient and hopeful in spite of everything. Afternoon light cast long shadows as Marla resumed her rounds. The office quieted after lunch's bustle, and the hum of air conditioning filtered through vents overhead. She returned to a spill at the entrance of a conference room, a sticky swirl of soda left by careless interns. As she knelt to address it, a voice startled her. "Need a hand?" A security guard, Emmanuel, approached, holding a roll of paper towels. "These tech folks," he grumbled with a half-smile, "think we've got nothing better to do." Marla nodded in thanks, accepting his help. Their brief teamwork yielded a spotless floor and a shared, unspoken camaraderie. At 3:30, Marla encountered her harshest trial, a delivery of new office furniture stacked in the central atrium. As she dusted the glossy surfaces, Alan Pierce, VP of Product, strutted through with a group of designers. He sipped a caramel latte, then looked up, eyebrows arching theatrically. The cup slipped from his fingers, caramel liquid fanning across the white tile. He peered down at the sticky mess and declared loudly, "Well, there's a perk to having staff like her, free cleanup crews on demand." Cameras popped inside phones as colleagues recorded, eager to share the spectacle. When the last droplet disappeared, Marla straightened. She looked Pierce squarely in the eye. "It's done, sir." Her voice was steady, low, and composed. The corridor fell silent. Pierce swallowed, his complexion paling. He nodded without speaking as she wheeled her cart away, the click of its wheels echoing her unwavering dignity. No applause followed, only the soft click of cameras closing and the hum of office ventilation. Evening crept in as fluorescent lights flickered overhead. Marla performed her final rounds, polishing elevator buttons and emptying waste bins. Her back ached, but she welcomed the tangible proof of another day well completed. The ritual of closure, locking supply closets, disposing of cleaning solutions, organizing her cart, lent her a sense of order in a world that seemed otherwise chaotic. At precisely 7 p.m., she surrendered her cart, clocked out, and paused at the security desk, where Emmanuel offered a respectful nod. "See you tomorrow, Miss James." She nodded back and stepped into the cool night air. The service SUV carried Marla through city streets, neon signs flickering overhead. She watched storefronts blur past tinted windows. When the driver neared her street, she tapped his shoulder. He pulled over beside a row of historic brownstones. Marla climbed the steps to her modest apartment above a local bookshop. Inside, the space was spare. A small bed, a wooden desk, a single bookshelf housing a library of well-thumbed volumes. She dropped her keys and headed to the desk, powering on the old flip phone that had become her lifeline. Her thumbs flew as she typed. Today's video. Polish. No mercy. One name glowed at the top, Elijah. She pressed send and waited. The phone buzzed almost instantly. "I've begun. Be ready." Relief, sweet and sharp, flooded her. Marla reached for a framed photograph on the shelf, herself beside a stern-faced man in a tailored suit, his arm around her shoulders. She traced his sharp jawline. A memory stirred, the day he gifted her that yacht trip, her first taste of the world beyond mops and closets. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty room. "Tomorrow, they'll know my name." She lay on her small bed for a few minutes, tracing the ceiling cracks as if deciphering a secret. Each fissure reminded her of the fractures within Apex's spine, ready to be broken and rebuilt. Her heart pounded with both fear and exhilaration. By dawn, the first tremors of change would ripple through those corridors she called home. She inhaled deeply, steeling herself for the challenge. The invisible woman would soon become unforgettable in irreversible ways. Outside, city lights danced on rain-slick streets. Apex Digital Group's tower glowed in the distance, a beacon of ambition and power. Yet within its walls, the invisible woman prepared her own revolution. She closed her eyes and envisioned the moment she would step into the light. Patience had a purpose. Resolve had a plan. And Marla James was ready. Marla James arrived before the first tendrils of dawn had curled around the city's skyline, her footsteps silent against the polished marble entering Apex Digital Group's lobby. The digital clock above the concierge desk flickered to 5:43 a.m., but before most custodians had even prepared their carts, Marla was already at her station. The building breathed around her, air vents whispered, security monitors glowed, and the faint hum of computers in sill-level offices thrummed like distant engines. She paused by the glass entrance, inhaling the antiseptic air with measured calm, then wheeled her battered janitor cart toward the northern wing. She wheeled her dented cart to the main break room, its gleaming counters bathed in the harsh glare of fluorescent lights. Yesterday's almond croissants and half-empty coffee carafes had vanished, devoured by executives eager to begin their day. She arranged fresh decaf and dark roast selections, refilled the sugar caddy, and wiped fingerprints from the stainless steel espresso machine. Each motion was as precise as choreography in a silent ballet, each detail binding her to a routine that shielded her from the world's cruelties, even as that same world prepared its next indignity. By 6:17, the first elevator doors parted and disgorged a group of directors. Among them was Alan Pierce, VP of Product Development, his tailored suit as crisp as his entitlement. He paused at the threshold of the lounge, surveyed the pristine counters, and frowned. Marla looked up from arranging glass tumblers and offered the faintest nod. Pierce's lips twisted into a smirk. In a theatrical gesture, he lifted a caramel latte and deliberately spilled it atop the marble island. The rich brown liquid oozed down the polished surface. "Oops," he exclaimed, voice dripping with mock innocence. "Looks like we've got janitorial staff on demand." Laughter bubbled from the gathered group as phones emerged, eager to capture humiliation. Marla worked in silence, each fiber of her being dedicated to restoring order. When she finished, she stood, removed her gloves, and said simply, "All clean, sir." The lounge fell silent. Phones lowered. Pierce swallowed his smug retort. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself a small sense of triumph, proof that dignity could flourish in the face of scorn. In the corridors, someone had scrawled chalk graffiti outside the executive washrooms, "Cinderella's Palace." Pink chalk framed the ornate sign, mocking her invisible labor. She filled the hallway with her presence as she knelt to scrub the tiny letters, each stroke erasing the insult. She lingered to reshape the floor's shine, eyes half closed in concentration, until the mocking words vanished without a trace. Later, on the fourth floor, she discovered a shipment of designer office chairs had arrived, their pristine leather surfaces marred by spilled black ink. Someone had teased Marla by writing, "Ink spilling for the people." Several junior analysts giggled as they passed the chairs, videos rolling on smartphones. Marla knelt, opened a small travel kit of solvents and cloths, and attended to each stain with deliberate care, isolating every blot with alcohol swabs until the leather gleamed as if new. Between tasks, she checked her pocket flip phone. 2 texts glowed in response to yesterday's report, "Legal team engaged. Prepare tomorrow's materials." Hope and resolve coursed through her veins like wildfire. The plan was in motion, but she still had work to do, literal and figurative scrubbing before the big reveal. At midday, she broke for a simple lunch, a homemade salad and a bottle of water. She ate behind locked doors in the supply closet, leaning against shelves stocked with cleaning solutions. The room smelled of bleach and citrus. She closed her eyes and let exhaustion wash over her, recalling a childhood lesson from her brother. "You deserve respect," he had said. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise." She found strength in those words as she rose to continue. Mid-morning, Marla stepped into the vestibule outside the boardroom to refill the water dispenser. She hesitated as she heard raised voices through the thick glass doors. Inside, the CFO, Ramsey Black, was pacing. Elijah's acquisition means zero liabilities, Ramsey hissed. That janitor, our Cinderella, makes us look irresponsible. We must find a scapegoat. A director's cold voice added to her unease. Marla's heart pounded, but she refilled the dispenser and slipped away, steady and unseen. The afternoon brought another humiliation. In the main atrium, where glass elevators rose like crystal pillars, she found the floor littered with broken crystal statuettes, the kind executives displayed on their desks, shattered shards sparkling like faux diamonds. A hastily scribbled note lay among the debris, Cinderella's treasure. Board members circled, taking pictures, their laughter ricocheting off the atrium walls. Marla sank to one knee and swept the glass fragments into a dustpan, careful not to miss a sliver. As she worked, Johnny, the timid intern from Human Resources, approached with a moist towel and gentle eyes. I saw what happened, he whispered, avoiding the glances of passing managers. Are you okay? Marla accepted the towel and wrapped it around her glove. Thank you, she said. This means more than they'll ever know. His eyes glistened with empathy. They need to see the real you, he murmured. His genuine concern seemed to fracture her isolation. She smiled, small but heartfelt, and returned to her duty with renewed vigor. Johnny's kindness reminded her that solidarity existed even in this building's cold heart. She tucked the towel into her belt as a talisman of compassion. By 5:50, the custodian floor glowed under bright fluorescence. Marla wiped down the railings overlooking the lobby and extinguished stray dust. Security guard Emmanuel appeared, pushing an empty coffee cart. Heard about the atrium, he said quietly. I've got extra gloves if you need them. She shook her head. I've got what I need. He nodded. You're stronger than most give you credit for. Their brief exchange carried the weight of genuine respect, a rare currency in these halls. Later, Marla returned to the atrium to ensure every crystal shard had been removed. She paused by a spotless glass pane and traced a finger over its surface, recalling how this place gleamed when maintained, when respect was mutual. She imagined these halls bathed in courtesy rather than cruelty. The quiet vision steeled her resolve. Tomorrow's reckoning would reshape Apex's very soul. Evening descended as Marla completed her rounds. She locked the closet doors, organized her cart, and collected her accrued minutes on the time clock. Her reflection in the clock's glass face revealed a woman carved from quiet steel, unyielding and precise. She exhaled and stepped into the elevator, pressing the ground floor button. But as the doors slid closed, a group of executives crowded in, holding the doors open with smirks. Cameras watched her. Their whispers sliced through the silence. Say something, Cinderella. At the security desk, Emmanuel handed her a folded slip of paper. Left this for you. She opened it to find a smiley face drawn in black ink and a note. Tomorrow's just the beginning. No signature. A promise or a threat, she couldn't tell which. The ride home was quiet. The driver, familiar and discreet, avoided conversation. Marla stared through the tinted windows at neon signs and bustling traffic. She considered the day's assaults and her unwavering response. Tomorrow, the board would convene. Tomorrow, Elijah's acquisition would become public. Tomorrow, the invisible woman would no longer be ignored. When she climbed the steps to her apartment, the hall lights flickered. Inside, she retrieved her flip phone and typed a single message. They had coffee, ink, glass. They'll have worse if they think I'm finished. She hit send. Within seconds, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Town Hall. Be prepared. Relief and anticipation coursed through her. She placed the phone on the nightstand, slid beneath her thin blanket, and closed her eyes. Outside, Apex Tower gleamed against a moonlit sky. Inside, Marla James lay awake, mind buzzing with resolve. Every spill undone, every smear washed away. Tomorrow she would turn the tables. Marla sat at her narrow desk in the cramped apartment above the bookshop, the single overhead bulb casting a pool of yellow light over her open flip phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stared at the two messages blinking on its small screen. Legal team engaged. Prepare tomorrow's materials. She took a deep breath, folded her hands in her lap, and closed her eyes. Outside, the city's late-night hum echoed through the thin walls, distant car horns, the rumble of buses, a scattered shout of laughter. In this moment of stillness, she allowed herself to remember the first time she'd spoken to Elijah in earnest, not as his little sister in need, but as Marla James, the woman who never spoke unless necessity demanded it. The line crackled as she dialed the satellite number Elijah had given her. Her heart pounded in her throat. Each ring felt like an eternity. At last, a deep, familiar voice answered. "Marla? Is that you?" He sounded calm, in control as always. She pictured him on the deck of his yacht, the Mediterranean breeze ruffling his dark hair, the blue water stretching to infinity. She realized how long it had been since they talked, since he'd listened to her voice without the barriers of business calls and courtesy protocols. "Elijah," she whispered, her voice low but clear. "I'm finally doing it." She swallowed, picturing every insulting clip she'd watched. Spilled coffee, smears of nail polish, shattered statuettes, the mocking notes. Each one had cut deeper than the last. "They've crossed every line," she continued, "and I can't live like that anymore." Silence crackled through the line. She wondered if the connection had died, but then he spoke, his tone unwavering. "Tell me everything, Marla. I want every detail." Taking a steadying breath, Marla began her account. This morning, Pierce dumped his latte directly on the island counter in front of half a dozen interns. He said, "Sweep it up, Cinderella." They filmed it. Then I found red polish smeared in the ladies' room with a note, "Clean up time, sweetheart." And this afternoon, someone shattered crystal statuettes in the atrium and left another note, "Cinderella's treasure." Ajani tried to help, Emmanuel offered extra gloves, but no one else cared. She paused, her chest tight. "I'm tired, Elijah. I can't be invisible anymore." On the other end, Elijah's breath was a quiet rumble. "I'm so sorry you've endured this," he said. "You deserve respect. I've arranged everything." Marla's pulse quickened. She remembered his promise, no arguments, no delays. "I've spoken with my legal team in London and New York. They're drafting the acquisition documents now. By tomorrow morning, I'll own the controlling interest in Apex, 51%. They won't see it coming." The words tasted like triumph on her tongue, yet she remained guarded. "What about the board? The chair?" she asked. His laugh was soft, amused. "I've handled that," Elijah assured her. "Ingrid Holt doesn't want a fight, she wants stability. She's signed off. Bankers are aligned. Regulatory filings are in motion. By dawn, the announcement goes live." Marla pictured board members exchanging frantic glances in glass-walled conference rooms, lawyers scurrying with stacks of documents, executives staring at their screens in disbelief. "You said, announcement," she repeated. "Will there be a town hall?" He hesitated. "Yes. At 10 a.m. local time. In the auditorium. I want you there, on stage with me. You'll have the floor." She closed her eyes, envisioning that moment. The room packed with people who had mocked and ignored her, now forced to face her and her brother. She pictured Elijah standing beside her, radiating power. She felt a surge of exhilaration and dread. "I'll be ready," she replied softly. "What should I say?" He paused again, then answered with characteristic brevity, "Speak from your heart. They need to understand what you endured and why it stops today." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I'll practice tonight." They spoke for a few more minutes, Elijah giving logistical details, Marla asking about timeline specifics. Then he offered reassurance, "Rest now. You've earned it. Tomorrow, you change this place forever." She thanked him, ended the call, and let her head fall back against the desk. The world outside her window continued its restless dance. But inside her chest, everything had shifted. A future she'd only dreamed of was now within reach. The next morning arrived in shards of gold light. Marla awoke before her alarm, heart fluttering like a trapped bird. She dressed carefully in fresh slacks and a crisp blouse. Today she would not blend into the gray jumpsuit. She pinned her name tag to her lapel, Marla J. Then she packed her flip phone, a small notebook, and a pen into her bag. She paused at the mirror, smoothing her hair and taking a slow, steadying breath. Today was the day she would step out of the shadows. She arrived at Apex's rear entrance at 7 a.m., scanning faces as she walked through the service corridor. Custodial staff offered respectful nods, security guards murmured greetings. No one yet knew what would unfold. She passed conference rooms where employees rehearsed morning pitches and sales reports. The tension in the air felt thicker than usual, but no one suspected the storm about to break. Inside the lobby, Marla paused by the grand atrium, gleaming floors, soaring glass ceilings, and polished chrome columns. She ran a hand along the smooth railing, remembering the shards she'd swept just 24 hours ago. Now the atrium was spotless. She closed her eyes, visualizing it filled with colleagues who would soon bow their heads in apology. At 8:30 a.m., she joined Elijah's team in the executive waiting room, a suite of leather chairs, mahogany tables, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She perched at the edge of a sofa, gripping her notebook. The room buzzed with anxious energy. PR consultants straightening ties, legal counsel reviewing talking points, IT specialists testing microphones. She glanced at her reflection in the glass. Calm eyes, determined expression. She drew in a breath, then exhaled. Shortly before 9 o'clock, the giant auditorium doors swung open. C-suite executives filtered in, their heels clicking on marble floors. Junior staff filled the back rows. A smattering of cleaning staff slipped into seats near the rear. Someone whispered, "Is this the acquisition announcement?" Another speculated, "Google? Apple?" Marla allowed herself a small smile. They had no idea. At 9:45, Elijah's team escorted her toward the stage. She followed him up the steps, her lungs tightening at the hush that fell over the crowded room. On the stage were two podiums draped in the Apex digital logo. A massive screen behind them displayed the corporate colors, blue and silver, waiting to be filled with slides or footage. Today, it would show something entirely different. Elijah stepped to one podium, Marla to the other. He looked at her with quiet pride. She swallowed, lifted her chin, and addressed the audience in a clear voice that echoed through the hall. "Good morning. My name is Marla James." A murmur rippled. People recognized the face they had mocked. "I worked here for 10 years as a member of the custodial staff. Every day, I cleaned your spills, polished your glass, and restored order to this building. Yet you never saw me." She paused, letting her words settle. "You called me wallflower. You joked about how I blended into the walls. You spilled coffee on purpose, smeared polish to humiliate me, and shattered your own decorations, and filmed it to amuse yourselves." Faces paled, cameras lowered. She clicked the remote in her hand. The screen behind her lit up with 4 clips: the latte spill, the nail polish smear, the shattered statuettes, and the mocking Slack comments. The audience gasped as each clip played on loop. "You thought it was harmless," she continued, voice trembling with controlled emotion. "The joke. But every one of you left a scar." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Today that ends." The screen switched to a simple slide, effective immediately, 51% acquired by Elijah James. Then, all individuals in these clips are terminated. No severance. No references. A stunned hush followed. Marla turned to face Elijah, whose calm presence radiated authority. He nodded once, silently endorsing her words. In the stunned silence, she spoke again. "My brother, Elijah, saw something you did not. A person with dignity, skill, and heart. This company's soul can be rebuilt, but only if we treat each other with respect. I will be serving as Chief Culture Officer to ensure that this place honors every individual who walks these halls." She lifted her chin. "Thank you." Then she stepped back as the auditorium erupted into applause, some tentative, some heartfelt, but all transformative. Backstage, Marla exhaled, relief and exhilaration coursing through her veins. Elijah embraced her, whispering, "You were brilliant." She allowed herself a genuine smile. The invisible woman had spoken and been seen. And as she followed him off the stage, she felt the weight of a new chapter beginning, one not defined by mop or cart, but by her own voice and the respect she had reclaimed. At twilight, Apex Digital Group's corridors transformed from bustling pathways into halls of hush and intrigue. Marla James exited her office, formerly a supply closet turned chief culture officer workspace, and paused in the soft glow of the hallway lights. She could feel the shift in the building's atmosphere. Conversations no longer revolved around quarterly profits or market shares, but around respect, empathy, and the remarkable change sparked by yesterday's events. Her footsteps echoed against polished marble as she reflected on the journey so far. On the second-floor landing, she paused by the chrome railing, remembering how just 24 hours ago she had stood under spotlights, revealing the cruelty that had been swept beneath these floors for years. Now, the executive doors loomed ahead, closed, their occupants uncertain whether to return to work or resign in shame. Marla's heart fluttered with both anticipation and compassion. She knew that true transformation demanded guidance, not punishment alone. She stepped into the private elevator, pressing the button for the top floor. The doors closed smoothly. The display panel flickered. G8. A few seconds later, the doors reopened to reveal Elijah James, standing in the dim violet ambience of the executive lounge. He wore his signature midnight suit, a dark, tailored ensemble that blended seamlessly into the shadows, his crisp white shirt the only accent. He looked every inch the storm about to break. "Marla," he said, voice calm as the distant sea, "are you ready?" His presence in the elevator was unexpected yet entirely commanding. She nodded. "Ready as I'll ever be." He smiled faintly and joined her on the descent. With each floor, the lighting brightened, and the faint hum of cleaning equipment drifted through the vents. They emerged on the fourth floor into a corridor where glass-walled conference rooms lined one side and marble pillars the other. Marla observed faces pressed against the glass. Employees who moments ago had mocked her now looked on with wide eyes. Some stared in disbelief, others in hope. "Today," Elijah began, "we inaugurate the culture tour." He gestured ahead to a large mural that had been unveiled, a winding mosaic of staff photographs. Custodians, receptionists, interns, executives, all featured in equal proportion, connected by ribbon-like patterns. Beneath it, a plaque bore a simple message: every role, every voice. Marla followed him forward. "We'll walk through the entire building," he continued. "I want people to see who makes Apex possible." His deep voice resonated through the corridor. She caught glimpses of tears in accustomed stoics, smiles forming on faces long flattened by ambition. They reached the first conference room where the new Respect Workshop would be held. The glass door sported bold lettering, "Respect Workshop." Inside, chairs were arranged in a circle. A projector stood ready. Elijah paused at the threshold and addressed the small group that had gathered, managers and senior staff, summoned by email minutes earlier. "Welcome," he said, stepping into the room. "This is not an ordinary training. Today, Marla will guide you." He nodded to Marla, who stood at the center. She drew a breath, recalling the terrified interns who had laughed at her spills, the VPs who had prided themselves on immunity. Now, they watched her with rapt attention. "Thank you," Marla began. Her voice carried through the space. "We're here to rebuild our community. Not just by issuing code of conduct documents, but by practicing empathy." She introduced an exercise. Each participant would pair with someone from a different role and share a moment they regretted from their time at Apex. The partners would then switch chairs and speak from the other's perspective. Marla led the first pairing. Below her instructions, a senior engineer confessed dismissing an intern's idea. The intern then described how that dismissal had stung. The room fell silent with understanding. Elijah watched from the doorway, arms folded. His expression softened as he saw empathy blossom among the group. After 20 minutes, Marla concluded the session. "Respect is earned by listening," she said. "By seeing each other not as titles but as people." Emerging into the corridor, Marla and Elijah proceeded to the commons area, the old executive lounge, now an open space filled with bookshelves, comfortable seating, and a juice bar. Interns poured fresh smoothies. Custodial staff distributed welcome packets. The air smelled faintly of citrus and new beginnings. Executives approached hesitantly, but soon joined a group engrossed in a spontaneous book discussion led by a receptionist named Claudia. Elijah and Marla walked side by side, observing. Suddenly, Grayson Holt appeared, suit rumpled, eyes shifting anxiously. He approached and cleared his throat. "Elijah, may I speak with you?" Elijah turned, eyes two polished onyx stones. "Of course." Holt swallowed. "I want to apologize. For my actions." His voice lacked its prior arrogance. Humility replaced smirks. Marla braced. Elijah placed a hand on Holt's shoulder. "Speak your truth." Holt inhaled. "When I mocked Marla, I ignored her humanity. I see now that respect is not a privilege bestowed downwards, it's mutual." His head bowed. Elijah's midnight suit swirled as he turned. "That's the spirit we need." With that, they continued through the open-plan offices on the 5th floor, where desks had been rearranged into collaborative pods. Marla paused by a pot of orchids at reception, once ignored, now front and center. A sign read, "Life thrives when nurtured." She whispered to Elijah, "They're growing." He nodded. Night fell as they reached the cafeteria. White boards mounted along the walls displayed colorful meal suggestions. Fresh salads and vegan options replaced catered buffets. Marla felt her stomach rumble in genuine anticipation. Employees mingled, sampling turmeric shots and peach-infused water. A banner proclaimed, "Fuel your mind and body." At the far end, a small stage held the final surprise. Elijah flicked a switch. A spotlight cut through the dim, illuminating a solitary podium draped in deep navy velvet. Murmurs rippled. Marla followed Elijah's gaze. On the podium lay a simple microphone and a single sheet of paper. He tapped the mic. "This space is now our inspiration hub," Elijah announced. "Every week, one team member, any role, will take the stage to share ideas, dreams, or lessons. To inspire all of us." He nodded to Marla. She cleared her throat. "I arrived here nearly a decade ago, mopping floors and cleaning windows. At times, I felt invisible. Today, I stand before you not as a janitor, but as a voice for every person you once overlooked." She paused. "The lessons I've learned cleaning floors apply to leadership, attention to detail, persistence, and pride in your work." She glanced at Elijah, who watched with steady pride. "I challenge each of you to ask, who am I ignoring? Who deserves my respect?" Her voice rang clear. "Thank you." Elijah raised a glass from a nearby refreshment table. "To Marla," he toasted. The employees raised their glasses in return, some tentative, most genuine. Marla sipped, savoring a blend of peach and mint, but more so, the taste of acceptance. Walking back toward the elevator, Marla's steps felt lighter. She glanced at Elijah. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. He placed his midnight-suited hand on her shoulder. "No, thank you for showing us the way." The elevator doors closed, and the lobby lights dimmed behind them, leaving the building transformed by a presence as commanding as the midnight suit, a brother and sister team determined to rebuild a company from its underappreciated foundations. Yesterday's scars healed, slowly but surely. Later, as Marla returned to her apartment, the city lights winking through windows, she replayed the evening's events. Her brother's midnight suit had become authority and compassion. The world had shifted. She sank her bed, phone in hand, and dialed Elijah. "Thank you," she said when he answered. "It was more than I ever imagined." "You earned every moment," he replied. "Rest now. Tomorrow we continue." She closed her eyes, a smile playing on her lips. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, instituting wellness programs, circles, and open forums. The invisible walls had crumbled. At Apex Digital Group, a new story had begun, and she and Elijah would ensure its chapters were written with respect and humanity. Morning light hardly penetrated the executive suites of Apex Digital Group as Marla James arrived for her first full day in the role of Chief Culture Officer. The corridors, once echoing with confident footsteps and hushed gossip, now carried an undercurrent of apprehension. Soft whispers followed her path. "Did you hear what happened?" I wonder who'll be next. Her arrival in professional attire, tailored slacks and a silk blouse, underscored her new status. Yet in her eyes shone the same quiet resolve. Today, the consequences of the previous day's town hall unfolded in real time, and Marla braced herself to witness justice in action. By 8:30 a.m., the HR department had mobilized. Security personnel stood by with discreet badges and clipboards, while HR managers prepared formal termination notices. Outside room 12B, a line of employees, once complacent in their cruelty, waited to collect their belongings and sign final paperwork. The air crackled with tension. Executives who had smirked at spilled lattes and snapped photos now avoided direct eye contact. Some trembled as they folded suits into garment bags. Others stared blankly at their phones, scrolling through resigned tweets about losing their dream jobs. The building's hierarchy lay shattered. Marla observed from the hall, clipboard in hand. Her heart ached at the sight of professionals reduced to fearful supplicants, but she knew accountability was essential. She remembered each video clip played on the auditorium screen, the latte spill, the nail polish smear, the shattered statuettes. Those recordings had stripped away the executive's immunity, exposing them to consequences they had never believed possible. Now, as they shuffled toward the exit, Marla felt a mixture of vindication and compassion. This reckoning was painful but necessary to rebuild Apex's fractured culture. As the final terminated executive passed her, Marla offered a simple nod of acknowledgement. No words, just recognition of their shared humanity. A few paused, surprised, and managed a faint thank you in return. Others looked away, tears brimming. In that silent exchange, Marla realized that true leadership sometimes meant extending dignity to those you held to account. She crossed the spotless marble floor to the reception area, where stunned colleagues watched from behind glass walls, and whispered reassurance to the nervous security team, "Stay strong. We're doing the right thing." At precisely 10 a.m., Elijah James strode into the lobby in his midnight suit. The suit's dark fabric absorbed the morning's glare, his presence commanding immediate attention. A hush fell. He approached Marla and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly, voice low over the hum of the building. Marla met his gaze. "Ready for the next phase," she replied. He nodded, then stepped forward to address the gathered staff. "Today marks not only an end," he began, "but a new beginning. We must act swiftly to rebuild trust." He led the remaining executives and staff into Conference Room A, where a long mahogany table awaited. On its surface lay new policy documents, team charters, and the outlines for the respect workshops. At Elijah's direction, Marla took the lead. She guided the group through a revised code of conduct, emphasizing zero tolerance for harassment and mandatory empathy training. Executives who had survived the purge listened intently, penning notes. Outside, HR managers opened new desks for previously overlooked roles, facility maintenance, IT support, and catering, each now respected voices at the table. By midday, small groups gathered across the company. Development teams huddled around whiteboards with Marla facilitating empathy mapping exercises, HR-led apology circles, where colleagues expressed remorse to each other. IT created an anonymous feedback portal. Laughter mingled with tears as employees unburdened years of indifference. The atrium, formerly the site of glass shard humiliation, hosted its first kindness station, with free coffee and sticky notes for positive messages. Marla moved between clusters of staff, offering encouragement and collecting testimonials for the weekly Culture Bulletin. Word of Apex's transformation spread rapidly beyond its walls. Journalists tweeted about the unprecedented public firing and rebranding of company culture. Tech blogs ran headlines, "Billionaire brother cleans house, Apex Digital's radical reckoning." Social media buzzed with admiration and skepticism alike. Marla monitored these reactions on her phone, feeling both pride and apprehension. Outside world opinion could bolster change or undermine it. She drafted a brief statement for the press release, focusing on the values of respect, dignity, and shared purpose. Late afternoon brought a more intimate moment. Marla descended to the ground floor where the custodial team assembled for her inaugural staff appreciation luncheon. Tables were laden with sandwiches, fruit, and small tokens of recognition, engraved pens, personalized mugs, and certificates celebrating years of service. As she presented each award, the custodians beamed. Many had borne silent witness to executive cruelty, now they experienced gratitude and applause. Marla paused before Marcus, her fellow supervisor. Placing a hand on his shoulder, she said, "Your work has kept this building running. Today we honor you." The room erupted in applause. In the newly christened Commons, Marla held an open forum with mid-level managers, those who had neither mocked nor defended the janitors, but had quietly remained on the sidelines. She invited them to share observations and suggestions. One manager, Anika, confessed that she had felt powerless to intervene. Another, Jamal, suggested peer mentoring to foster collaboration. Marla listened intently, jotting notes. Each idea fueled the nascent cultural shift. When the hour ended, she thanked them. "Together, we'll ensure respect isn't optional here." As evening approached, Marla returned to the atrium for a final checkpoint. The floor glowed under soft uplighting. Kindness station notes adorned a temporary mural. She tapped her phone's memo app and recorded a short entry. Day 2 of reckoning, executives gone, culture reboot initiated. Early successes, workshops, media coverage, staff morale rising. Next, feedback loops, leadership accountability. Onward. Satisfied, she snapped the phone shut and inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of fresh paint and possibility. Back in her office, she and Elijah convened for a debrief. He poured 2 cups of herbal tea from the Commons' new beverage bar. "You handled everything with grace," he remarked, sliding a cup across the desk. Marla accepted it, fingers brushing the warm ceramic. "It was hard," she admitted, "but necessary." Elijah nodded. "Tomorrow we'll introduce the mentorship circles and launch the community engagement fund. Our work is just beginning." Marla's lips curved into a genuine smile, the first unguarded expression since she began this journey. That night, Marla walked home beneath streetlights flickering like distant beacons. The city's pulse felt different, more attuned to the rhythm of cooperation than competition. She reflected on the day's events, firings, policy overhauls, gratitude ceremonies, and the company's first tentative steps toward genuine empathy. Each moment had required courage from both the strong and the broken. She felt honored to guide them through reckoning. That night, Marla walked home beneath streetlights flickering like distant beacons. The city's pulse felt different, more attuned to the rhythm of cooperation than competition. She reflected on the day's events, firings, policy overhauls, gratitude ceremonies, and the company's first tentative steps toward genuine empathy. Each moment had required courage from both the strong and the broken. She felt honored to guide them through reckoning. As she entered her apartment, she paused by the windowsill, looking out over the lit façade of Apex Tower. No longer a distant monument to corporate hegemony, it now symbolized transformation, a building reclaimed by its people. Marla switched on her flip phone and typed a final message to Elijah, "Day 2 complete. Culture reborn." She pressed send and stared at the glowing screen. In that solitary moment, she understood that reckoning was not a one-time event, but a continuous commitment to accountability and care. She set the phone aside, sank onto her modest bed, and let consciousness drift. Outside, the city whispered promises of tomorrow. Inside, Marla James breathed deeply, preparing for the challenges yet to come. The reckoning was over, but the rebuilding had only just begun. The early morning light filtered through the eastern windows of the Apex Tower, bathing the newly renovated Commons in a warm glow. Marla James strode into the open space with purposeful steps, her heels clicking lightly against the polished concrete floor. She paused in the center of the room, surveying the transformation. Leather couches had been replaced with modular seating, vibrant artwork adorned the walls, and the air smelled faintly of citrus from the new juice bar. Tabletop messages scrolled across digital displays, reminding staff of upcoming workshops and volunteer opportunities. Framed photographs of mentorship circles and community events lined one wall, a visual testament to the company's cultural rebirth. A group of employees stood at one corner, collaborating around a high counter strewn with sticky notes. Laughter bubbled through the air as they sketched user experience ideas on a shared whiteboard. Marla approached, greeting them with a radiant smile. "Morning, team. How's the brainstorm going?" she asked, motioning toward a row of colorful stickies. Rana, a software engineer, tapped her temple thoughtfully. "We're mapping out our next feature release, but we wanted your input on making the process more inclusive." Marla knelt to review their notes. "I like that you've added cross-functional check-ins and peer feedback loops. Those will foster accountability." She suggested adjusting one sticky to emphasize customer empathy. The team nodded and began rearranging their schedule. "Great work," she said. "Keep me posted if you need resources." Marla rose and walked past the kitchenette, where two interns were sampling a tray of seed-infused snacks. "How are they?" she asked. The younger intern, Damalola, nodded with enthusiasm. "Delicious. We're planning to add some gluten-free options too." Marla gave her thumbs up. "Excellent idea. Let me know when the new menu goes live." Damalola's grin widened as Marla continued on her circuit. Mid-morning, Marla hosted an impromptu town square in the Commons. A microphone stood at a pedestal where employees queued. Ricardo, a data analyst, stepped forward. "I often felt invisible," he admitted. "After yesterday, I feel seen." "Thank you, Marla." Applause rippled through the crowd. Sophie, a project manager, suggested a mentorship circle linking interns with senior staff. Jamal, facilities technician, spoke next. "I keep your offices running," he said. "Recognition matters." Marla announced Facilities Appreciation Day to honor all behind-the-scenes workers. Employees cheered, energized by the spontaneous acknowledgement. Elijah observed from the balcony, pride shining in his eyes. Later afternoon, Marla convened the Emerging Leaders Circle, a forum for potential managers. She guided a session on values-based leadership, inviting participants to list 3 core values guiding their decisions. She shared hers: integrity, empathy, perseverance. Teams discussed applying these values to product deadlines, client presentations, and internal communication. Marla circulated among the small groups, offering feedback and encouragement. The room buzzed with collaborative energy, reinforcing her belief that leadership grew from shared purpose. The day's first official event was the launch of the Community Engagement Fund. Apex had earmarked a portion of its profits to support local charities and grassroots initiatives. The atrium filled with donors, nonprofit leaders, and company volunteers. A sound system crackled to life, and Marla stepped forward at the podium. She adjusted the microphone and scanned the crowd of supporters. "Thank you all for coming. Today we do more than talk about corporate responsibility. We act. With this fund, we'll partner with organizations that uplift our neighborhoods, whether it's building community gardens, mentoring youth, or supporting technology education for underserved students." She clicked a remote, and the screen displayed the fund's first grant recipients. Applause echoed beneath the soaring glass ceiling as Marla concluded, "Together, we make a difference." After the launch, Marla moved to the private boardroom. The executive board had changed drastically, familiar faces gone, replaced by new leaders recruited for inclusive leadership, women and people of color in key roles. Marla joined the circle and took notes as they discussed the quarter's pipeline priorities. When the topic turned to team morale metrics, she offered detailed feedback. "Our NPS, Net Promoter Score, has risen 10 points, but our anonymous survey highlights opportunities in cross-team collaboration. I recommend bi-weekly interdepartmental stand-ups and targeted leadership coaching to sustain momentum." The room nodded, scribbling her points. The CFO smiled. "Your insights are vital, Marla. Thank you for elevating this conversation." Late afternoon, Marla returned to the training room for a final respect workshop session with mid-level managers. She guided an exercise in active listening, where pairs practiced repeating back colleagues' statements verbatim before responding. Catherine, a marketing lead, admitted she often interrupted teammates. She shared a personal story about losing confidence when silenced. When her partner reflected those words back accurately, Catherine's eyes glistened. "I didn't realize how often I interject," she said softly. "Thank you for helping me see." Marla concluded the session. Growth begins with listening and extends through compassionate action. After the workshop, Marla gathered feedback forms. "Thank you for your honesty," she told the participants. "Accountability and awareness drive change." She scanned the responses, requests for family-friendly policies, more cross-functional projects, and leadership coaching. She tapped notes into her tablet, preparing to present them to Elijah at their evening debrief. At 6:45, Marla entered the glass-enclosed executive suite where Elijah waited. He had his laptop open and 2 cups of peppermint tea on the side table. He looked up and grinned. "You're on fire today," he said. Marla sat and shared highlights: fund launch success, workshop breakthroughs, mentorship program approval. Elijah listened intently, sipping tea. "You've redefined leadership here," he said. "They're not just responding, they're engaging." Marla nodded. "Culture is the product of genuine connection." Elijah tapped his keyboard. "Tomorrow, we unveil the flexible work policy and new parental leave enhancements. And next week, we host the first all-staff town hall since the acquisition." He paused, meeting her gaze. "I want you to open with your personal story, your journey from janitor to chief culture officer. People need real-life inspiration." Marla's heart fluttered. She had prepared her narrative. Now she would share it with a broader audience. "I'll be ready," she affirmed. As Marla left the suite, she passed the rooftop staircase and decided to stroll up. On the rooftop terrace, she inhaled the crisp evening air as the sun dipped below the horizon. The city skyline shimmered in hues of orange and purple. She surveyed the lights of Apex's tower, proud of how its interior sparkled with possibility. A gentle breeze ruffled her hair as she reflected on her journey, from the janitor cart in deserted halls to guiding a company's soul. She felt gratitude for the adversity that had shaped her. A notification buzzed on her phone, an internal Slack message from Elena, HR lead. "Phenomenal workshop today. People are talking about your authenticity. Keep it up." Marla smiled and typed back, "Thank you. This team deserves it." She pocketed the phone and whispered to the night sky, "We're just getting started." A sudden movement caught her eye, a small figure emerging from the stairwell below. It was a Johnny, the intern who had once offered her a towel. He approached shyly. "Miss James? Sorry to bother you." She turned. "Not at all. How can I help?" His posture straightened. "I've been thinking about the fund launch. I know a nonprofit that builds community gardens. They could use funding and volunteers." Marla's face brightened. "Perfect. Let's set up a meeting with the fund committee." He beamed and scampered off to fetch his laptop. They gazed over the skyline in companionable silence. Marla realized that empowerment often began with a simple invitation: to listen, to share, to act. This rooftop moment crystallized her purpose: leadership grounded in service. As night enveloped the city, Marla returned to her apartment, the urban sounds muted by her focused contemplation. She penned a brief entry in her journal: Day 180, Chief Culture Officer. We have launched the fund, restructured leadership, and fostered workshops. Tomorrow, we'll empower staff with flexibility and stories. The journey continues. With a satisfied grin, she closed the journal and switched off the light. Marla drifted off to sleep knowing that tomorrow's dawn would find Apex Digital Group responding to her guidance with renewed energy. Every day, she nurtured the company's heart. Every initiative bore her signature blend of compassion and clarity. The title of Chief Culture Officer was more than a position, it was a promise. In the quiet of her room, Marla James embraced her role as the new Queen of Apex, confident that her reign would be remembered not for decrees, but for the human dignity she restored. The end. Love the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the Morales Stories family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.